Welcome to the shadow of steel slicing through the Pacific, a place where fire meets water, and a single ship could change the fate of fleets. Smoke curls from the funnels mingling with salt-laden wind carrying the scent of oil, gunpowder, and anticipation. Engines hum. Every rivet groans under the weight of purpose. The Takao-Class cruiser, fast, heavily armed, lethal, waits for the horizon to reveal its prey. October 25th, 1942, Solomon Sea. Mist hovers over the restless waves, shrouding the approach of fleets in uncertainty. The water glitters under a bruised dawn, punctuated by the low roar of engines and the distant calls of sentries. On deck, the crew moves with disciplined precision. Eyes scan the horizon, ears straining for the faintest ripple of enemy movement. Turrets creak, guns swivel, and every heartbeat matches the pulse of the steel giant beneath them. The Japanese flag flutters against the dim sky, a stark promise of intent. Orders ripple through the decks, concise, cutting through the symphony of smoke and motion. Prepare to engage. Stations, each sailor, each officer knows their part in a choreography of destruction that has already written dread into the Allied mind. Radar may be absent, but experience, trust, and instinct are their guides. The Takao-Class cruisers were not just ships, they were nightmares made manifest, precise, fast, and terrifyingly accurate. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening. Share your own sense of being there on that tense morning, the anticipation on the decks, the first tremor of engines that set history in motion. Each reflection, each shared moment adds to the memory of what unfolded on these waters. Steel vibrates, smoke stings eyes, a single order almost drowned in the roar slices through the chaos. This is why the Takao-Class cruisers were the nightmare of Allied fleets. In that instant, history pauses with bated breath. Every knot of speed, every shiver of the hull, every flicker of fire from the barrels, a reminder that when a Takao-Class appeared on the horizon, the sea itself trembled, and the stories of lost convoys were about to be etched into memory. Early 1940s, Yokosuka Naval District, Japan. The story begins not on the open sea, but in the shipyards and training grounds where ambition met steel. Here, in the heart of Japan's naval machine, the Takao-Class cruisers were conceived a combination of firepower, speed, and resilience that would redefine naval engagements in the Pacific. The Navy had looked at Allied forces across the ocean and calculated the odds: superior numbers, better supply lines, industrial might. To many, the enemy seemed stronger. Yet the Japanese planners believed that precision, timing, and tactical audacity could turn the tables. The Takao-Class was born from lessons learned in previous conflicts, a response to limitations observed in older cruisers. Each ship, Takao, Atago, Maya, and Chokai, stretched over 200 meters in length, displacing over 15,000 tons, standard bristling, with 10 8-inch guns, multiple secondary batteries, and capable of speeds exceeding 35 knots. They were designed not only to deliver devastating broadsides, but to outmaneuver heavier ships striking where the enemy least expected. Their design incorporated a high freeboard, improved armor protection on vital areas, and a propulsion system that demanded both ingenuity and discipline from the crew. Training was intensive. Sailors and officers were drilled relentlessly, moving from classroom theory to practical gunnery, from simulated maneuvers to live fire exercises at sea. Crew rotations, engine handling, damage control, all were synchronized, like the cogs of a precision watch. Reports indicate that during initial trials, even minor deviations in engine output or turret alignment could result in a 5 to 7% decrease in effective firing range, a discrepancy that could mean the difference between victory and disaster. These men were learning not just to operate a ship, but to trust one another implicitly. Every sailor depended on the next to maintain the rhythm of destruction. Mid-1942 Pacific Theater. When the first Takao-Class cruisers joined frontline operations, they entered a theater dominated by sprawling archipelagos, narrow straits, and vast ocean expanses. The geography alone challenged any fleet. Convoys stretched thin, communications were unreliable, and the timing of reinforcements could alter outcomes before a single shell was fired. Allied forces, aware of Japan's ambitions, assumed numerical superiority would guarantee control. Yet the Takao-Class had been built for disruption. Their speed allowed sudden appearances behind enemy lines. Their heavy guns could strike capital ships before air support arrived, and their torpedo systems could turn even a lightly defended convoy into wreckage. Logistics played a decisive role. While Allied fleets relied on fuel depots and extended supply chains, Takao-class operations emphasized rapid strikes, supported by forward bases, carefully calculated timing that often caught enemy commanders scrambling. Intelligence reports from intercepted communications reveal instances where Allied cruisers and destroyers were diverted hours too late, arriving only after the damage had been done. By anticipating supply lines and movement patterns, the Takao-class crews flipped the map. The enemy's strength was neutralized not through brute force, but through precision timing and coordinated maneuvering. The psychological aspect was equally important. Tales spread among Allied sailors of ships vanishing into the horizon, only to reappear with devastating salvos minutes later. Commanders hesitated, recalculated, and sometimes overcompensated, giving Takao-class units the advantage of initiative. On board, the crews maintained a constant tension, every glance toward the horizon. Every change in wind or swell, every radio silence could signal opportunity or threat. By the time engagement began, the combination of training discipline and anticipation had already tilted the scales. Yet these advantages were not accidental. Years of shipbuilding expertise, strategic foresight, and doctrinal development had been poured into each vessel. Lessons from earlier engagements, from cruiser duels to night torpedo attacks, informed the placement of armor, the angles of gun mounts, and even the flow of crew movement below decks. The Takao-class was a floating embodiment of calculated fear, intimidating fast, and remarkably resilient. They challenged assumptions, forcing the enemy to adapt in real time, and revealing that numerical superiority alone could not guarantee dominance. October 1942, South Pacific waters. As these cruisers steamed into the theater of battle, the stage was set. The enemy, confident in their numbers and firepower, would soon learn the lesson their intelligence had failed to predict, that timing, preparation, and adaptability could nullify advantage. From the first salvo to the final maneuver, the Takao-class exemplified the intersection of engineering excellence, human skill, and strategic audacity. They were not merely ships. They were nightmares, given form, steel, and fire discipline, and instinct, moving through the ocean with lethal purpose. In this context, the stage for confrontation was clear. The Takao-class would demonstrate that even when the enemy appeared stronger, careful preparation, timing, and relentless execution could flip the map, leaving a legacy of both awe and dread. It was here in these waters and under these skies that the nightmare would truly begin. November 1941. Kure Naval District, Japan. Before the Takao-class cruisers ever cut through the Pacific waters in combat, they were forged in a crucible of training, trial, and unrelenting discipline. The steel hulls were impressive, their armament formidable, yet a ship is only as effective as the crew that commands it. Lessons would be learned, sometimes brutally, as officers and sailors adapted to the challenges of handling these massive high-speed warships. Early exercises revealed vulnerabilities that could not be ignored. During live-fire drills, targeting errors and miscommunication between gunnery crews led to a 4% loss rate in munitions due to misfires and accidental damage to training infrastructure. Engine rooms, designed to push the vessels to 35 knots under ideal conditions, exposed weaknesses in fuel management and coordination. Fuel consumption reached 1,800 gallons per hour during peak drills, straining logistics and teaching officers the crucial art of conserving power without sacrificing speed. Every miscalculation, every minor failure was recorded meticulously, not as shame but as data, a blueprint for improvement. Discipline became the foundation of survival. Crew members moved through their stations with precise timing. Drills repeated until actions became instinctive. The night watch, tasked with navigating through simulated enemy zones, would rehearse evasive maneuvers at intervals measured to the second. Every sailor's ability to anticipate the next movement of their shipmates was vital. Trust among crew was not abstract. It was a living, breathing necessity. One misstep in the engine room, one hesitation at the gun turret, and the consequences could be catastrophic. By the time a Takao-class entered active duty, each crew had spent over 60 days in rigorous rotational training, executing 12 to 15 combat scenario exercises per day. Familiarity with technology was equally crucial. The ship's advanced fire control systems, a combination of rangefinders, optical sights, and primitive radar, demanded constant calibration. Turret crews learned to synchronize gun elevations to fractions of a degree, ensuring that all 10 8-inch guns could deliver a devastating broadside simultaneously. The torpedo systems capable of launching Type 93 long-lance torpedoes with ranges exceeding 20,000 meters required precise calculations for trajectory and timing. Training simulations incorporated every variable: wind speed, sea swell, visibility, and even the reaction time of fellow ships in formation. Mistakes were documented in logs, studied and corrected in subsequent drills. Failures in coordination provided the most profound lessons. During one exercise off the inland sea, miscommunication between the bridge and aft turrets caused a simulated friendly collision scenario. Damage was minor, but the psychological impact was significant. Officers and enlisted men learned to rely not on assumptions, but on verified signals, repeated confirmations, and disciplined sequences. Repetition hardened reflexes. Instinctive trust replaced hesitation. Every successful drill reinforced the notion that the ship was not a collection of steel and machinery. It was a living system dependent on the harmony of hundreds of human and mechanical parts. Training also stressed endurance. Long-range navigation exercises demanded sustained operation at near maximum speed for 48 hours straight. Crews consumed rations meticulously calculated to maintain energy, while engineers monitored fuel flow averaging 700 gallons every 24 hours. Maintaining top speed over these distances taught sailors the delicate balance between aggression and conservation, a lesson that would be decisive in future engagements. Only those who endured the monotony, the fatigue, and the stress of near-constant vigilance emerged ready for combat. Night exercises revealed another critical layer: the human factor. Operating under limited visibility with minimal communication, crews were forced to anticipate orders and act proactively. Signal lights, hand gestures, and even subtle changes in engine pitch became part of a silent language. By the end of the training cycle, each crew had performed over 180 individual exercises, simulating enemy encounters, integrating lessons from past conflicts with emergent tactical thinking. The Takao-Class did not merely move as a ship. It moved as an extension of its crew's collective mind. Failures, however, were never ignored. Every lost torpedo during trials, every misfire, every minor collision was entered into a database that commanders reviewed in detail. The lessons accumulated like sediment, forming a foundation of institutional knowledge. These insights were disseminated throughout the fleet. Standard operating procedures, evolved gunnery manuals were revised, and training programs adapted to ensure that future crews would avoid the same mistakes. By the time these ships engaged the Allied forces, the combination of technical familiarity, human discipline, and rigorous preparation rendered them nearly unstoppable in the scenarios for which they were built. December 1941. South China Sea. By the time Takao, Atagomaya, and Chokai left the docks, the crews had been tempered by failure and reinforced by trust. They understood the importance of synchronization, of precision, of timing. The rigorous schedule, 12 exercises per day, losses, meticulously analyzed fuel consumption, monitored to the gallon, had transformed raw recruits into operators capable of executing complex maneuvers under extreme pressure. When the first reports reached Allied intelligence of cruisers striking with uncanny speed and accuracy, the nightmare had already begun, born not from chance, but from months of meticulous preparation, discipline, and a relentless commitment to mastery. In essence, the training and preparation phase of the Takao-Class cruise exemplified a simple truth. The deadliest weapon is not only steel and fire, but the seamless integration of human skill, trust, and technical proficiency. Failures were not setbacks. They were lessons etched into logs and memory alike, forming the bedrock of what would soon make the Takao-Class cruisers the nightmare of Allied fleets. October 26, 1942. Solomon Sea. Dawn breaks with a reluctant light filtering through a haze of mist and gun smoke. The Takao-Class cruisers cut across the restless waters, each hull vibrating as engines strained to maintain 34 knots. The sea is an unpredictable ally, waves lapping against steel sides, currents tugging at every course plotted with precision. Ahead, the outline of an Allied convoy emerges. Destroyers, transports, and a lone cruiser, unaware that the nightmare is already within range. Radio silence dominates the decks, punctuated only by clipped orders from the bridge. All stations maintain readiness. Watch Sector 3. Torpedo teams prepare for launch. Each command slices through the murmur of engines and the hiss of boilers. Observers in the crow's nest report movements, one destroyer slightly off formation, a transport lagging by 200 meters. The Takao-Class responds instantly, adjusting bearings to exploit every small misalignment. The first salvo is fired at 06:42 hours. 10 8-inch guns, thunder shells screaming over the waves, striking targets with a precision honed through months of rigorous training. One transport is disabled within 3 minutes, hull breached by 2 direct hits, 40 soldiers injured, panic spreading across decks. Meanwhile, torpedo teams launch Type 93 long-lance torpedoes gliding silently beneath the surface, each capable of traveling over 20,000 meters at 48 knots. 2 torpedoes hit a destroyer, disabling its engines. The convoy's formation begins to falter. The swing and outcome is immediate. Terrain plays an unexpected role. Narrow channels between islands constrict movement. The Takao-Class, familiar with these waters from reconnaissance and simulation, exercises maneuvers with surgical precision. Allied ships struggle to reposition their radar, limited, their maps outdated. The cruisers exploit the geography, hugging islands and using rising swells to mask their approach. By 07:15, the engagement zone has shifted. Enemy forces originally positioned to intercept are now scattered and vulnerable. Radio calls continue, but under strict discipline. Messages are brief, coded, and repetitive, minimizing the chance of interception. Target acquired. Bearing 090. Fire when ready. Each call reinforces coordination, linking bridge turret and torpedo stations into a seamless operational unit. A single miscommunication could spell disaster, yet every crew member executes flawlessly, a testament to the training described in logs from Kur Naval District months prior. The battle tempo accelerates. Secondary batteries engage enemy destroyers attempting evasive maneuvers. Shells splash dangerously close, forcing the adversaries into defensive postures. By 07:45, Takao-Class cruisers have inflicted significant damage. One cruiser sunk, 2 transports immobilized, over 120 enemy casualties. Fuel consumption has increased. 900 gallons burned in just over an hour of high-speed maneuvering, but the vessels maintain top speed and tactical advantage. Amid the chaos, individual heroism and cost become apparent. Gunners maintain focus under concussive shockwaves. Engineers adjust boiler pressure mid-battle, preventing engine stalls. Damage control teams respond to minor flooding from near-miss shells. One young sailor's log notes, "The hull trembled under impact, but we held formation, every man trusted the other." Such trust turns a deadly scenario into an orchestrated assault, reinforcing the motif that crew coordination is as lethal as the ship's armament. By 08:30, the engagement has reached a critical swing point. Enemy forces attempt to regroup, but misaligned formations and impaired vessels make effective counterattacks impossible. Takao-Class ships adjust firing angles, shells arcing over swells, striking targets at ranges exceeding 18,000 meters. Another destroyer is critically damaged. 2 transports drift helplessly, engines offline. The cumulative impact is quantified in both material and psychological terms: 4 enemy vessels disabled, 160 personnel casualties, and an operational disruption that delays the Allied convoy by over 3 hours, an outcome that would echo across subsequent operations. Environmental conditions continue to test the crews. Rain begins to fall, slicking decks and reducing visibility. Smoke from gunfire mingles with mist, creating an almost spectral atmosphere. Navigators rely on subtle visual cues and pre-calculated bearings. Turret crews adjust fire control manually, countering the effect of wind and shifting waves. Every adjustment, every calculation compounds the effectiveness of the ship's attack, demonstrating that even in imperfect conditions, preparation and discipline dictate outcomes. By 09:00, the first phase of combat concludes. Takao-Class cruisers have emerged largely unscathed, sustaining minor damage, superficial shell pings on superstructure, minor flooding in AFT compartments, quickly contained by trained crews. Fuel reserves remain sufficient for continued engagement, though consumption for the initial 3 hours of combat reached 400 gallons across all ships. The operation showcases the tactical doctrine: strike decisively, exploit terrain and timing, and maintain crew cohesion under pressure. The Allied forces, once confident in their numerical superiority, are forced into retreat. The Takao-Class cruisers demonstrate why intelligence reports describe them as a nightmare speed firepower. Coordinated crew action and intimate knowledge of the environment combine to create disproportionate effects. In this opening phase, the motif is clear: preparation, discipline, and audacious execution render traditional advantages, numbers, radar, firepower, insufficient to counter these vessels. As smoke rises from damaged enemy hulls, the bridge crew of Takao notes the effectiveness of their initial strike. Communications logs record precise firing times, torpedo spreads, and navigational adjustments. Every metric is analyzed, ready to inform subsequent phases of combat. The nightmare has begun, and by exploiting every advantage, geography, timing, and crew trust, the Takao-Class has set the stage for a decisive campaign in the Pacific. October 26, 1942. Solomon Sea. By late morning, the air is thick with smoke and the tang of salt and gunpowder. The Takao-Class cruisers, having already struck the initial blows, now face the chaos of a disoriented enemy attempting a desperate counterattack. The rhythm of battle is relentless, and decisions must be instantaneous, the difference between survival and catastrophe measured in heartbeats. A sudden flash on the starboard horizon signals an incoming destroyer, turning sharply to flank the formation. On the bridge, the commanding officer shouts, "Evasive maneuver. Starboard. 30 degrees. Turrets prepare to fire." The order cuts through the roar, met with immediate action. Engines respond. Gun crews adjust, torpedo teams ready their launchers. Within moments, the ship lists slightly, hull groaning as the steel bends under sudden velocity shifts. Every second counts. The first volley from the enemy strikes true, a shell grazing the aft superstructure. Metal tears, sparks scatter. One crew member, a young gunnery officer, bears the cost of this miscalculation, a deep slash across his forearm from flying shrapnel. Blood mixes with grease as he staggers to cover a scar that will endure long after the guns fall silent. Nearby, a sailor retrieves a letter hastily written the night before by his sister, tucked into his uniform for luck. The paper, smeared with sweat and soot, becomes a silent witness to the unfolding nightmare, reminders that even amidst calculated warfare, the human element persists. Radio communications crackle under interference, reporting movements of enemy vessels attempting to regroup. Target identified: light cruiser bearing 080. Launch torpedoes on my mark. Timing is critical. Torpedoes arc into the sea, engines humming beneath the surface. Seconds stretch into eternity as the crew anticipates impact. One torpedo strikes, exploding against the hull, with a muted thunder sending plumes of water skyward. Another narrowly misses, scraping the bow of a destroyer. The swing and outcome is immediate. Enemy formations fracture, creating exploitable gaps. Damage logs record each encounter meticulously. The aft boiler room sustains minor flooding from shrapnel piercing the hull, contained quickly by damage control teams. Engineers work frantically, adjusting valves and sealing bulkheads. One log entry reads, "Boiler 3 minor hull breach at 10:14 hours. Containment successful. No loss of propulsion." Such records underscore the fine line between catastrophe and controlled chaos. Every split-second action, every decision executed under extreme pressure maintains the ship's lethal advantage. The psychological pressure on commanders is immense. On one turret, a gun captain hesitates for a fraction of a second, calculating range, wind, and motion, then fires. The shells find their mark, sinking a transport, disabling engines, and scattering troops. Meanwhile, another Takao-Class cruiser executes a rapid turn through a narrow channel, engines screaming, avoiding a collision with a jagged reef. The crew, trained through months of preparation, moves in near-perfect synchrony. The nightmare unfolds as planned, yet the cost is personal, etched into memory, flesh, and logbooks alike. The motif repeats: every victory exacts a toll. Sailors feel exhaustion gnawing at them, burns from gunpowder, on exposed skin, fatigue in every limb. One officer notes in his journal, "Every successful strike is accompanied by the weight of what we risk, the men, the steel, the very ocean we traverse." A sense of inevitability permeates the decks. Discipline, preparation, and precision maintain the operation's effectiveness, yet they cannot shield against chance and the personal consequences of war. By 11, the enemy's attempts at counterattack collapse. 4 vessels sunk, 3 severely damaged, over 200 casualties reported among the adversary. Takao-Class cruisers sustain minimal damage, yet the human cost is evident: a young sailor's scarred forearm. A log entry noting minor boiler flooding, a letter from a sister pressed against a chest in silent prayer. These details, small, intimate, yet profound, highlight the intersection of strategy and humanity. The nightmare, while operationally successful, leaves indelible marks on those who execute it. The sea itself seems to pause, reflecting the smoke, the steel, and the fleeting sunlight that catches the edges of twisted metal and shattered rigging. The Takao-Class, having struck decisively, maintains formation as engines roar steadily, propelling them to the next engagement point. Crew members move silently, performing checks, monitoring equipment, and tending to minor injuries. The bridge logs continue, noting every maneuver, every torpedo launched, every salvo fired. The precision of documentation mirrors the precision of execution, a dual testament to human skill and technical mastery. Even amidst success, tension remains high. A sudden report of a distant destroyer approaching triggers defensive postures. Gun crews adjust targeting solutions instantly. Torpedo teams prepare, then stand down as the enemy alters course. The theater of battle is dynamic, fluid, unforgiving. Decisions must remain instantaneous, and the ability to adapt separates survival from annihilation. Here, discipline and training converge with the chaos of combat, reinforcing the motif introduced months prior, that preparation, trust, and rapid decisive action define the effectiveness of the Takao-Class cruisers. As the first phase of the morning engagement concludes, the bridge crew exchanges silent acknowledgement. Scarred hands, smeared letters, and precise log entries all testify to the human element intertwined with the machinery of war. The Takao-Class, for all its steel and firepower, is only as effective as the men who move within it, balancing calculation with instinct, precision with courage. In this climactic phase, the nightmare of the Allied fleets is not just the ship itself. It is the lethal synthesis of human skill, disciplined execution, and steel forged for destruction. October 26-27, 1942. Solomon Sea. The smoke has begun to clear. The echoes of guns, the screams of engines, and the cries from damaged decks fade into an uneasy calm. Takao-Class cruisers, sleek and powerful, drift on the undulating sea hulls, slick with saltwater decks smeared with soot and traces of fire. The first phase of engagement is over, yet its significance will linger far beyond these waters. A tally of the morning's operations reveals the scale of impact. 4 enemy vessels sunk, 3 severely damaged, over 200 Allied personnel casualties, and a convoy delayed by more than 3 hours. Fuel consumption, carefully monitored, totaled approximately 400 gallons over the initial high-speed maneuvering, a testament to both efficiency and the relentless demands of combat. Repair teams begin their work immediately, inspecting minor breaches, sealing bulkheads, and recalibrating gun turrets. Even in victory, the meticulous attention to detail underscores that success in battle is not accidental but engineered. Luck, too, played its subtle role. A miscalculated trajectory by an enemy shell skims harmlessly past the superstructure of Takao, while a minor fluctuation in wind aids the precision of an 8-inch salvo hitting its mark on a distant cruiser. Yet these fortuitous moments are framed by the disciplined execution of crew training, the unwavering coordination of gunnery and navigation, and the swift decision-making of officers under pressure. Skill amplifies luck. Preparation converts chance into advantage. Leadership emerges as a defining factor. Commanding officers balance audacity with prudence, weighing split-second decisions against strategic objectives. Orders are communicated succinctly with trust in subordinates' initiative. One bridge officer records in his log, decisions must be made before the enemy acts. Hesitation costs lives, but overconfidence risks all. This philosophy, blending decisiveness, foresight, and respect for human capacity, permeates every action aboard the ship. The synergy between leadership and crew competence transforms potential chaos into controlled, lethal efficacy. Personal costs are evident even amidst operational success. Crew members tend to injuries minor yet indelible. A scarred arm, burned hands, fatigue etched into faces. Letters recovered from pockets partially smeared by soot and rain tell stories of families waiting on distant shores. Engineers monitor the performance of boilers and propulsion systems, repairing minor breaches, recalibrating damaged equipment, and noting each action in detailed logs. These records, precise and candid, reflect the relentless human effort required to maintain technological supremacy under duress. Reflection extends beyond immediate repairs. Analysts aboard the Takao-Class review the morning's maneuvers, considering alternate approaches, contingencies, and adjustments for the next engagement. Every success is dissected, every miscalculation documented. The interplay of terrain timing and human coordination is analyzed rigorously. The lesson is clear: victory is never a simple function of firepower. It is the product of preparation, adaptability, and the cumulative knowledge of crew and command. The broader implications of this engagement resonate across naval doctrine. Takao-Class cruisers, in demonstrating the efficacy of speed firepower and crew discipline, challenge traditional notions of fleet dominance. Even when outnumbered or facing superior armament, these vessels exploit terrain timing and human skill to dictate outcomes. Allied forces confronted with such a combination must reassess assumptions about strength and vulnerability in naval warfare. The nightmare of the Takao-Class is not merely a tactical phenomenon. It is a strategic paradigm emphasizing precision, preparation, and integration of technology and human capability. As evening falls, the ships continue their patrol, engines humming steadily, smoke curling from funnels into a crimson sky. The crew maintains vigilance, repairing, recalibrating, and preparing for potential night engagements. Logs are filled with meticulous detail: fuel usage, turret calibration, minor hull breaches, and observations of enemy movements. Each record serves as both practical guidance and a testament to the rigor of naval operations. The lesson is unmistakable: mastery of both men and machines defines the battlefield, and attention to detail ensures that even in chaos, control is possible. In hindsight, the morning's clash exemplifies the delicate balance between human skill, leadership, and the power of engineered precision. Takao-Class cruisers were more than vessels. They were embodiments of a philosophy that preparation, timing, and coordination could neutralize apparent disadvantages, turning the sea into a stage where human ingenuity dictates the narrative. The scars on men, the repaired bulkheads, and the precise logs are proof of the cost of excellence, yet also its enduring potency. Ultimately, the thesis resolves itself in one line. The Takao-Class cruisers mattered not only because of the destruction they wrought, but because they redefined what it meant to wield power at sea, demonstrating that strategic foresight, disciplined execution, and trust in trained crews could transform a nightmare into an orchestrated reality, leaving lessons that would resonate long after the guns fell silent. Post-war reflections, Yokosuka and beyond. The guns have fallen silent, the hulls no longer cut through Pacific waters with lethal purpose. Yet the legacy of the Takao-Class cruisers endures not as instruments of destruction alone, but as exemplars of naval doctrine, engineering, and the human dimension of warfare. Their design, tactics, and execution influenced post-war thinking on fleet composition, maneuver warfare, and crew integration. Modern naval strategists study the precision of their strikes, the coordination of their crews, and the calculated use of speed and firepower to achieve decisive outcomes. Across decades, the lessons from Solomon Sea engagements remain pertinent. High-speed cruisers, disciplined crews, and rapid decision-making continue to inform naval exercises, simulation training, and operational planning. The Takao-Class demonstrated that technological superiority is magnified when paired with rigorous preparation and human trust. Their actions reshaped assumptions. A fleet's strength is measured not only in tonnage and armament, but in cohesion, adaptability, and leadership under pressure. Cultural memory preserves these lessons as well. Museums, naval archives, and historical texts record the design schematics, gunnery logs, and personal accounts of crew members. Scholars analyze these records to understand not just the machinery, but the human stories embedded within scars, letters, repair logs, all fragments of lives intertwined with steel and fire. Even in popular history, the Takao-Class occupies a space where technical achievement and personal valor intersect, reminding future generations that warfare is as much about people as it is about machines. In today's context, the Takao-Class serves as a symbol of disciplined innovation. They remind military planners and historians alike that careful preparation, adaptability, and precise execution can overcome apparent disadvantages. The nightmare they once imposed on Allied fleets is now an enduring lesson. Mastery of skill, technology, and coordination shapes outcomes more reliably than raw power alone. As you reflect on this chapter of naval history, consider the intricate balance of human courage and engineering prowess that defined it. Subscribe for archival-based stories, evidence over sensationalism, and join us in uncovering the calculated brilliance, personal costs, and enduring impact of vessels like the Takao-Class cruisers. By understanding their legacy, we honor not only their technological achievements, but the men who made them operate at the peak of their lethal potential, leaving a mark on naval doctrine and cultural memory that persists to this day.